Live. And it says we are live, but you never know. So you let it go and you count down a few seconds. Wait till they get a load of this. Okay, here we go, boys. In 3, 2, 1. It's 1 week before the start of the regular season, and what are the injuries you need to be concerned with? That and our top 5 favorite players to draft. It's the Audible Live, and Dr. Gene, all eyes are on the Giants, and all eyes are wondering about Saquon Barkley. I feel like we do it every week, but what's our weekly checkup with Barkley say with the regular season 1 week away?
Yeah, Giants sound like they're getting healthy. All good news for Barkley so far. Practicing in pads this week. Still not clear from New York whether or not he's going to play this week or not, but I think there's a good chance that we'll see him. I don't think we're seeing 20 carries from him. We've got some time yet in these next 10 days to see how he recovers and if he's good enough to go or not. But looks like he's more close to playing in week 1 than we expected. We heard some week 3 rumors early on in the preseason, but making good progress, and we'll see if he's able to take more than just those 12 to 15 carries that we're expecting.
Gene, one of my favorite hedges to draft, because I'm all in on the Buccaneers passing game, has been Giovanni Bernard. But now they're talking about a high ankle sprain with him, which is why they also signed Darwin Thompson to their practice squad. So tell me a little bit about whether, is that high ankle sprain and how long we should be waiting now.
Yeah, we're hearing that it's mild, quote unquote. Not a lot of things that make you comfortable about a high ankle sprain. Hopefully that means that it's low grade and he's able to return to practice and play soon. But I'd consider him questionable for opening weekend. Hopefully it's not something that tends to linger. He was getting so many of those passing down snaps that he's an important part of the offense for them. So I think they're going to take some care there. His being a little bit old for a running back may play against him as well, but haven't seen the injury specifically. Not sure if it happened in the preseason game or if it was a practice situation to be able to tell whether or not we should trust the low grade notes that we're hearing, but hopefully he's a player that's going to be able to go. We may not know much more about him until Wednesday's practice report next week.
It is the Audible Live, and Dr. Gene, it looks like you're doing house calls, right? Because you're in the car. So on the road, it's what we do here on the Audible. And, well, the Noah Fant thing is weird because it's an undisclosed leg injury. The Broncos are not like the Patriots. Usually you can find out a little bit, or usually someone behind the scenes. Actually, well, I probably shouldn't say it. They had one of their most talkative people move on, and that's the most I can say. So, information's a little tougher to get now in Denver. But this Noah Fant thing is weird, dude, because it's undisclosed leg, and he hasn't practiced in a few weeks.
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks now. Yeah, it's concerning that he's not back to practice. The undisclosed nature doesn't bother you too much. Almost everything out of Denver sounded good, and you're closer to the situation than I am, but everything sounded minor. Did not sound like the team was too concerned. Vic Fangio didn't seem to bring up too much issue. They expected him back. So, we are now at that point where we've been saying for about a month now that these veteran players, if they're going to be ready for week 1, they need to get back and recondition and prove to the team that they can play whatever role they may have in mind for them on opening weekend. So we're seeing player after player after player get back. And if Noah Fant doesn't get back soon, certainly before the weekend, then we have to be concerned about his availability for week 1.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room, which is J.K. Dobbins' future. So tell me about whether or not there's complications with that ACL and other ligaments.
Yeah, I think there are going to be complications with the ACL. There was a hint of I can't remember if it was Adam Schefter or somebody else tweeted or posted that there was maybe some damage to the LCL as well. I was expecting to see PCL as the other ligament that was injured. Either the PCL or the LCL is not good. Not that you want to see an ACL complicated by an MCL, and I know I'm just playing alphabet soup here, but the ligaments on the back and the outside of the knee are difficult to repair, and sometimes they scar in unusual ways, and the joint's a little bit stiffer or a little bit more loose when they heal. So it's going to be very interesting to hear after he has the surgery what was done, what other structures may have been injured. But when you get hit right on the front of the knee like that, we've seen this with Rob Gronkowski in the past. Sometimes you hope that it's just an isolated ACL. But the mechanism of that injury, the video that we were able to see, definitely looked like it stressed some of those other ligaments. And those things are going to be difficult to recover from. So I'm not going to go so far to say this is a career-threatening injury for J.K. Dobbins, but you wonder how well he's going to recover. Certainly players have done that. This is not the same as an Achilles injury for a running back, and all the conversation we've had that over the months and years with Cam Akers and what have you. But this is something that we're going to have to watch very carefully. The good news for Dobbins is he's got a full 12 months before the next season starts. So he's got time to rehab, and they've got time to be careful about how they approach it surgically. And we may not know. I don't know that the Ravens are going to tell us exactly what structures are involved. That's going to give us a better sense for whether or not he's got a good chance to recover next year or not. But very unfortunate injury, and it's, I'm sure it's frustrating for Dobbins that there's more going on. So hopefully we'll know more in the future, but this is something that's going to go all the way through next offseason as we learn more.
Just quick follow-up to that. I don't want to create any hope for anybody when I mention this question, but I remember when we had a conversation on the way back from the Senior Bowl about Nick Chubb and his multiple injuries, and when we were talking about how he had basically his whole knee sewn up from every angle, and he was able to return and play at an extremely high level.
Frank Gore, Willis McGahee, Nick Chubb, there are multiple instances of running backs recovering from multiple ligament knee injuries and additional damage and doing fine. It's just, we wouldn't even necessarily say an ACL is a clear recovery for a running back at this point, but an elite talent like Dobbins with the very best surgical and rehab treatment has a good chance to recover for sure. But LCL and PCL definitely gives you a little bit more concern.
It is the Audible Live here. Dr. Jene Bramel, Matt Waldman, Cecil Lammey, and, Curtis Samuel is ramping up, returning to practice, working on the side, though, expected to be in pads next Monday and ready to practice with the team. In fact, Ron Rivera saying, quote, he's very confident that Samuel will play week 1 against the Chargers. Well, Ron Rivera is very confident. How confident are you, Dr. Jene?
Well, I think it's good to hear that there's confidence from Washington. Again, this is what you expect from these players. Get them back into condition, then put them back in pads, and then put them into practice situations and see if they're ready to go. We can be confident now that he's met the medical staff's criteria to be able to take those first steps, but he's got to get through these practices without any setbacks. And until we get to Wednesday, Thursday, and we see him at least limited practice, if not fully practicing, at that point, I think we can be confident that he's going to play in week 1. But right now, I think we can be optimistic, but I in no way can we guarantee that he's going to be good to go for a full workload.
What are your thoughts on DeAndre Swift with his September outlook?
Yeah, I think, that's kind of what we've been hearing for days now, that, Dan Campbell has said they're not sure whether he's going to be in condition enough to play. Swift continues to practice, and some observers say he's looking fine. The local beat writers in Detroit are pretty reassuring about the situation. So I think what that means there is they know he's going to be a little bit slower to recondition than maybe what they suspected and expected. So he, like Saquon Barkley, may not be ready for a full workload just yet.
It is the Audible Live here. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/footballguystv. Make sure you do all those YouTube things, like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a vid. Well, speaking of miss, the Vikings are going to be missing Irv Smith now, with the latest of Irv Smith being out 4 to 5 months. It is meniscus, likely to end his season. The problem, though, is we have Tyler Conklin. What's he coming back from? A hammy, top of my head? And then Chris Herndon just coming back from a bruised ego. But we'll see what the Vikings tight end group is looking like. Dr. Jene, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's not too surprising. I think this always sounded like the way it was going to go. Generally, especially in a younger player, if you can put the meniscus back together, it saves the cartilage that's sitting underneath the meniscus, and it's a much better long-term issue. It's not great for the Vikings. Obviously, Smith doesn't want to miss the season, but it's better for the long-term health of the knee if the meniscus gets repaired. So the only way that this was going to go differently is if they had no other choice, and it wasn't in a place where the blood supply was going to be okay, or the tissue wasn't in a good enough situation where they could have tied it back together. So not good for Smith this year. They're leaving the door open maybe a little bit in case they make a playoff run and he's able to recover kind of in the playoffs, since it's a couple week longer season this year than it's been in the past. But expect his season to be ended and be unlikely for him to come back. But 2022 should be a good spot for him.
So, Gene, I contend that Kenny Golladay might be one of the smartest wide receivers in the NFL. And the reason for my contention is that he found that the roster where the team that rostered John Brown was dumb enough to sign John Brown and let him sit on their injured reserve for the length of his contract, because that's what's going to happen. And he decided to follow John Brown there because he knew after a few practices with Daniel Jones that if it was between him and John Brown getting bumped, Well, if they were able to keep John Brown this long, then obviously he could just hang out on the IR too, or on the injured list whenever he wanted to, if he just got sick of trying to reach for Daniel Jones errant footballs. What do you think about this? Or is he going to be back anytime soon?
He's at least back to practice along with Barkley today and a few others. I think I might have even seen Rudolph got a little bit of practice time, and I have to look into that again. But Galladay has to get through this reconditioning period. This was, we mentioned from the beginning, a lot of times these preseason injuries, you don't have to be that concerned about it. Player will be back in a week or so. We're waiting for reconditioning. But this one always looked like a mid-grade situation, and we're going on 3 to 4 weeks where Galladay wasn't able to do much. So he's really got to ramp up quickly in order to have a pretty full workload for week 1. I'm skeptical that he's going to be ready for that. What we're really hoping for him at this point is that he doesn't suffer an aggravation that lingers well into the beginning part of the regular season. So he's another player that we're going to be watching practice participation carefully for, and hopefully he's ready to go.
Excuse me, John Ross.
John Ross. There you go.
Yes,
John Ross. Yeah,
John
Brown, John Ross. Man.
Right.
Speedsters who are banged up.
I don't foresee John Ross being on the active roster in any sort of capacity, unfortunately.
Ever.
That's true. It is. Are you in the cash cab? I think Brandon had that earlier. I think that was our best. Where is Dr. Jene Bramel?
I told Matt that I was in the back seat, and he was happy enough to describe me as a chauffeur situation. So
yes. Dr. Jene Bramel.
He's winning. He's winning in the cash cab right now with all these questions he's answering. Anyhow,
he's winning in life. He is Dr. Jene Bramel. You check out his work at footballguys.com, and of course, we're going to have the waiver wire show coming up starting in week 2 with Dr. Jene. Plenty of stuff. Your second opinion blog, Dr. Jene, will be out. A new video series, I believe that'll be on Saturday. That's also on our YouTube channel as well. So. Dr. Jene, it's the busy time, and I hope you're ready, my friend. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, sure. I mean, hopefully you guys will see as little of me as possible for the health of all the players in the league and otherwise, but unfortunately we've got 4 to 5 months of injuries to talk about, so hopefully we don't have a whole lot more J.K. Dobbins situations to talk about.
There you go. Dr. Jene Bramel, ladies and gentlemen. Josh says, we're playing trivia. I'm in. It is the Audible, brought to you by Footballguys.com. Go to Footballguys.com, check out our new website, and, of course, click the Join Now button in the upper right-hand corner and join us on this football journey. You love the show, you want to support the show, then you check out Footballguys.com. And, Matt, now it's time for my favorite part of the evening.
Yes.
We got to go top 5. Top 5, right? It's no longer the Audible Live. It's top 5 on the Audible Live. Maybe that's what we should call it, right? Top 5 on the Audible Live.
How about top 5 favorite things about doing top 5s?
Oh, I should just stop the show right there.
Yeah. I'm going to get fired. There we go.
We're going to talk about our favorite players to draft because we just had Fessel OG. And I swear to God, Jordan McNamara, who does the Dynasty show with Chad Parsons, Jordan kept sniping me. I'd never have drafted with Jordan before. And I even put it in the chat room, Matt. Like, I was on the air, so I couldn't, like, go back and forth in the chat like I normally do. But I was just like, I hate drafting with Jordan McNamara. Sorry, because he ruined my team. I was lining up Javonte, sniped him. Lining up Jerry Jeudy, sniped him. Lining up Najee Harris, sniped him. So there's a few of my favorites right there that I didn't get a single one because of Jordan.
There you go. Well, sometimes that happens, but the good thing about that I find that's Murphy's Law is that usually the person who snipes all your picks ends up like having the worst team. So like sometimes that can happen where they can save you from yourself unknowingly. So.
Our pot stoner degenerate Jason says we get 49 likes and Matt combs his hair. All right. Now, I guess before we jump into the top 5 of the top 5, how do you go about balancing? Because fantasy football is supposed to be fun. We want to win, obviously. We want to be competitive in what we do. But our favorites generally aren't going to be slappies for the most part. You might use your heart and those heartstrings pull on you, Matt. You might draft the guy a little bit early. Like I'm drafting Najee in most leagues. I'm drafting Najee Harris if it gets past 5. If it gets past 5, Nick Chubb's gone. Chubb is kind of my canary in the coal mine. But what? Nick Chubb's gone. Najee Harris. Like, no question. I know people have asked me about Austin Eckler or Aaron Jones or whatever. I'm like, no, once you get to the Nick Chubb canary in the coal mine, it's Najee Harris. That's just me. But before we jump into our top 5 or the top 5, how do you balance, like, having some of your favorites while also maintaining value in how you draft?
I think for me, it comes down to I'm not a huge homer with any team. So usually my favorites are players who are really good. But the issue is it comes down to like how, Nick Chubb may be the best running back in the league, but is he the best fantasy value in that area? And that's a good question where I would look at, you kind of look at that and you decide, sometimes you want to balance a player's upside with safety. And so, you look at a certain situation, you decide really what's important about that round. Like for Nick Chubb in round 1, people might go, well, you could get other players who have more upside in round 1. And then the answer for me usually is that's fine, but you're not trying to hit bullseyes in round 1. You're trying to draft players who are going to produce consistently at a high level. And usually for me, that's what it is can I find consistency at a high level? And for me, Nick Chubb, anytime between spots 5 and 12, easily I'll take him. Yeah, fine.
Take him and run with it. All right, so now that we've jumped in and I kind of spilled the beans, Najee Harris is my first of my top 5. I believe that the Steelers are overrated. I did a TV show in Vegas this week with my dear friend Mike Pritchard, and he asked me, like, who's the most overrated team in the NFL? I was like, it's the Steelers, because they're riding on this reputation that they can't uphold anymore. Like the Steelers, and I say this very painfully, Matt, as you well know, but the Steelers aren't as good as the headlines would have you think that they are. Now, that is unless Mike Tomlin, and I have put in word that should get to Mike Tomlin in a joking way, of giving Najee Harris the ball 350 times. Now, if they do that, Matt, then maybe the Steelers could play some swarming defense, certainly the upgrades they've had there, but just limit Ben Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger is done. I don't want Deontay. I don't want Juju. Chase I would take. I like the big play opportunities with Chase, but still, for the most part, this had better be all of Najee Harris. And if it is, then my favoritism towards Najee Harris will pay off in this situation. So do you agree? Do you see things similarly? And do you think, maybe gleefully so, the Steelers are the most overrated team in the NFL?
Well, as a Cleveland Browns fan, it's hard for me to think of them as being overrated after what happened last year. So, that's kind of, it's interesting that that's the perception that they're actually good at this point. And I'm not trying to be mean to the Steelers on that fashion. It's just that they have a strong defense, and I think that the national media probably just feels like that Ben Roethlisberger is still good enough, and most national media ignores offensive line play because they don't seem to see how it connects. They talk about skill players. They've got great skill talent. That offensive line, though, is an issue. But the Cleveland Browns a couple of years ago had promising skill talent and no offensive line, and you could see what happened to them. Now they got a good offensive line, and now they may be the team to beat in the AFC, which is basically whether it's the Chiefs or the Bills, whichever one you want to pick. The Browns seem to be second or third in that order, and it all has to do with that. So I agree with you there that it's, the Steelers have been on the overrated side. But Harris, listen, check downs, the ability to be able to get the tough yards, he's going to get the volume because, Snell's who he is. McFarland is never going to be what anybody thought he was. No. So their best, if Harris gets hurt, really the best back on that team, if he's still there, is Ballage. Is Ballage even still there?
Did they put him on the practice squad? I know. It's been an active day past couple of days.
We'll have to take a look and see. But he might be their best chance if Harris gets hurt. So hopefully Harris doesn't, and he has a full season and he looks great.
Don't eat a breakfast burrito before the show. It is the Audible Live, going through the players that you love and that you love to draft, their top 5 favorites. But Odds Bodkin here in the chat room brings up something very interesting. He hates Alabama, and he literally has to work hard to try to draft around Crimson Tide players. So, yeah, Matt, I get that. I understand that. If you got hate in your heart, let it out. But I would say this, like, okay, that's kind of the opposite of what maybe that's next week's show. Oh, it's week 1 next week. But like, if we only had another week, it'd be top 5 least favorite players to draft.
Cowboys rosters. There we go.
Yeah. How do you have anybody you avoid out there?
No, but the Cowboys, I always kind of cringe a little bit when I take Ezekiel Elliott, because I like Elliott, but as a player, but I've never been a big Cowboys fan. But
and there's some Pepto picks out there, I think is what we're calling them this year. Those guys where you just kind of relieve someone else took them. I feel that way with Julio Jones, right? He's going to wear a gold jacket, but from a fantasy lens, like,
you just wait for it. He's being held together by baling wire with that leg, and that's the tough part with him. But right. Chubb would be my 5th favorite, just because he's, like we said, he's consistent, great offensive line. Yeah, Kareem Hunt's there. But the thing is that Nick Chubb is a top 12, top 15 back, easy, who's proven, to be a strong player with, great yak and great top end speed, with probably the best vision in the league. And if Kareem Hunt does get hurt, he's a 2,000-yard back in this offense. And that's
and the thing about Nick Chubb, Matt, is that he can produce at RB1 levels on like 15 touches.
Yeah.
That other backs would need 20 touches, or dare I say 25 touches. So everyone, it's like this, danger zone. Fear is our most powerful motivator, and that's a subject for a different podcast. But I think people have this fear around this Kareem Hunt fear. It's like there's enough for both, and Nick Chubb is so good. He only got 15 touches this week, and he scored me 27 points. Like, that's the type of guy that he is.
And it's also about volume. And the thing is that people get so stuck on volume because volume is a source of information where you don't have to watch football. And so if you're someone who's using spreadsheet information, because you can't always possibly watch every player unless you do this full time and you have no life, So I understand that if you have a life and you need a cheat code, then you're going to look at box scores. But Nick Chubb is the type of player who slips through the cracks or in between the cell lines on your spreadsheet there. And sometimes he can go missing there for you, and you not understand the context of what Cecil just explained.
The context of this show includes some Metallica references. Before we get back to the top 5, Tony wants to know, did you learn any Cliff Burton over the last week, Matt, as you're playing bass?
Considering I've been playing the bass for all of 5 weeks, right now I'm learning the James Jamerson songbook. Right now I'm learning what's going on with Marvin Gaye, and that's going to take me a couple months because I'm learning by ear.
You've been playing bass for 5 weeks, and already you're better than Nikki Sixx. It is the Audible Live, going through the top 5 players that we love, and we got Najee Harris, we got Nick Chubb. I'm going to talk about Jerry Jeudy. Teddy Bridgewater's there, and because Jordan McNamara, who I will curse his name this entire season, was able to snare Jerry Jeudy before me, I ended up getting Cortland Sutton. And then Woodrow was in the chat, and he was like, "Are you gaslighting me?" Because I told him that Sutton hasn't gone vertical yet. You know what I mean? Like, Sutton is cutting. We saw that in his lone preseason game. So I feel good about him running and cutting, but he was already doing that. He's been doing that for a month. I still haven't seen Sutton go up top for any pass. I mean, I've seen him throw them, and I've seen him look at them flat-footed, when the old Cortland Sutton probably would have went up to get that. So no, Jason Wood, I was not gaslighting you, whatever the hell that means. I was just telling you my observations. Now, I ended up drafting Sutton because I wanted a piece, and I didn't get Jerry Jeudy. It was kind of a spite pick. I was like, screw it, I'll take Sutton. Sorry, Joe. But Jerry Jeudy with Teddy Bridgewater, the precision that we see, he's a precise player. And Teddy Bridgewater, a lot of people maybe won't remember or don't want to remember the fact that Teddy, what do you have, 2,000-yard receivers last year?
Yeah.
So, for everyone saying, and I get it, right? They're going to run the ball. They're going to run the hell out of the ball. That's how they want to win. That's how they want to play. but Teddy's shown and proven that he's able to support multiple 1,000-yard receivers, and Jerry Jeudy's his favorite target. Makes a lot of sense to me.
No, I love it. I mean, if you're gonna go for a player from that perspective, it gives you, he certainly gives you a chance. And it's one of those things that sometimes with injuries, once they get comfortable, everything just kind of skyrockets from there. So I can certainly see that. I'd say my fourth guy, because I'm going in reverse order, counting down. My fourth guy is actually Bryan Edwards with the Raiders. I was a Bryan Edwards fan out of South Carolina. Big dude who can break tackles fast enough that he has that, and quick enough to have that kind of return specialist skills for a big man in the open field. He can make people miss and really weave through a defense. And even though he had drop issues at South Carolina, his senior year, he really shored that up well. And his past two camps have been fantastic. Last year, he was supposed to start. He had an ankle injury, and it derailed his whole season. And Derek Carr at that time was like, listen, this guy reminds me of Devontae Adams in terms of the rapport we have, the way we communicate, the way he can create position to get open. And this year, not only has he earned the Adams Cup again and has been dominating camp, but teammates and coaches are mentioning guys like Randy Moss and Terrell Owens. Now, I don't believe all that, but they're talking stylistically things that they see about the physicality, the ability to have the catch radius and go up and win the ball. And he's played well enough to be the starter. And the fact that John Brown was like, hey, cut me because I want to find another place to go.
Right.
That tells you.
That says a lot.
That says a lot. He's going to compete with Darren Waller for yardage and touchdown lead on this team if he stays healthy. And two strong camps in a row at being one of probably the top 5 to 6 receivers in last year's class, and just was derailed by injury. He's free money right now, like at round 15. So, you can get him at round 12 and you're still doing well. You're still doing great. So for me, getting Bryan Edwards has been a top priority, and he's my number 4 guy on my list.
Now, because of this, and our man Jason, Potstoner Degenerate up there in Greeley, big Raiders fan, which doesn't make sense because he lives in Greeley, but whatever. Does this mean Henry Ruggs will fail in your eyes or struggle?
I think he'll be used more as a deep threat. I actually think that Derek Carr can get to 4,200 yards. And I think what you're going to see is that Ruggs will lead an average, per catch average. He'll have some drops because of the difficulty of the types of throws he'll have to get. But I think he's more in the line of 800 to 900 yards, which is good. It's just not great. I just don't think he was ever cut out to be a lead receiver on this team. I think John Brown leaving says more actually about both players, because both players can play outside, and Edwards is actually going to be the X, where John Brown is usually an X. So if Edwards is the X, that says a little bit more about him than John Brown, and also probably says something about Hunter Renfrow being able to play in the slot, John Brown not being able to play in the slot, and knowing that they can mix and match those guys a little bit better.
Yeah, I was always disappointed when the Steelers didn't get Hunter Renfrow. And this one's for you, Jason. Every day, Garrett Bowles. Every day. There you go. There's your Vic Fangio impression. It is the Audible Live countdown, top 5 of our top 5. And, I got to, I'm not going to shy away from it, Matt. I love Josh Allen. I love taking Josh Allen. He's one of those quarterbacks. I just set it and forget it with the kid. Love seeing the growth, him and Stephon Diggs, the weapons that they have around him, how they put it all on him. Hell, even in his preseason game, what was it? Who somebody tweeted that, right? Where almost all of his snaps were just shotgun. Like, they just go shotgun. They just let him run the show. I mean, it's just a perfect fit. And, yeah, I love drafting Josh Allen where I can, when I can, because there's nothing better. And I think, honestly, your fantasy drafts are won in the mid and late rounds, not in the early rounds. But I can get Josh Allen, and I don't have to worry about quarterback. And now I can go try to find those value picks in the later rounds. And that might even prompt me to take Allen a little bit earlier. So he's my third pick as we're counting down top 5.
And I love that pick because I think one of the biggest myths about fantasy, building a good fantasy roster, is often generated unsaid by readers and listeners of content, where they listen to folks talk about late round quarterback. And so suddenly when you pick an early round quarterback, the person who wants to be cool becomes like the draft police and starts making fun of you for picking the early guy. And
right.
Now, the thing is the most important thing about drafting is understanding your strengths and weaknesses and what your preferences are to building a good team. Just because somebody is, the idea of, somebody who's popular, like JJ Zachariason, who talks about late round quarterback, just because he's good at that, just because other people listen to that and have done well with that, may not be your thing. So when you look at Josh Allen, I mean, what he did last year and in the offense that he's in, where they really allow him, they've created a scheme where he's going to have multiple opportunities to find open players. And the receivers fit that scheme well. They have the good play action type of looks. He's grown a ton. And then they've also grown the offense with him. And as a result of that confluence of those two factors make him an elite quarterback. So, it's one of those things that whether JJ is right or wrong, he's not right or wrong. He's giving you good advice that might be right for you and your style, or it might be wrong for you and your style. Just like all of us, there's no one way to win. And I love the Josh Allen pick. For me, my third guy, former Steeler, Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown to me is I cover the Bucs for the training camp reports that we do here. And, I'm one never to believe that players have fallen off a cliff because the earth is flat. And once you reach a certain age that there's dragons that are over there and that are just going to eat your career alive when you still show evidence of being good. It was like Adrian Peterson. They're like, he can't play anymore after he was playing behind a bad Vikings offensive line. And even though he never became a top starter again, he was still a fantasy-worthy player for several years. And when you look at Antonio Brown this year, one, he's been dominating camp. I mean, like whether it's against the Titans or his own team, which has a good secondary, some of the best safeties in the league, stifled Patrick Mahomes' team big time with those 3 safety looks last year in the Super Bowl. And when you look at Brown, he's cutting the way he's supposed to. He's making contested grabs. He's got that swagger back. He's playing with Tom Brady, who's always wanted to play with him, as we've seen. And Bruce Arians revealed he's needed knee surgery for the past 3 years, and he finally got it, and he looks great. And this team, he was a top 15 receiver down the stretch last year when Tom Brady, finally learned enough of the playbook, even though he still wasn't able to make the adjustments that he was making in New England because the system was different and he wasn't as familiar with all that due to COVID. They were kind of slow to get that rapport. Now they have that rapport. Now they're going to be able to make all the adjustments that they want to make pre-snap and with the different types of option routes, and the communication won't be as tough. I think that there's going to be 3 1,000-yard receivers in Tampa Bay. And one of my favorite ones is Antonio Brown, who will basically probably make the dragon belch and basically, burp him out with a big fire cloud, that will be good for you to have a top 15 receiver at a price that's way less than that.
And now that you've talked about the coof, YouTube will demonetize us. But either way, speaking of which, super quick, I probably shouldn't say this, but one of our, let's say, NFL buddies texted me today, and he goes, how many fake cards do the Buccaneers have? And I was like, I could think of a couple, but shh, don't want to say anything about that. What I do want to say is fan up. Are you tired of the same old fantasy contest? Thinks you got what it takes to flex on the competition and win this season's hottest fantasy football contest? Check it out, Fan Up's Flex Frenzy season-long contest is the perfect contest for you or any fan. Fan up the app that everybody's talking about. Download that app in the App Store for Apple. Must be 18 years or older to play. Restrictions apply per state. Join an awesome community of over 50,000 fantasy and esports fans who love to compete against each other and team up as friends. For the ultimate prizes and bragging rights, sign up started and ends Thursday, September 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you get in, fan up, get that app, download it in the App Store, fan up, and just be fans. Okay, we got a couple more left of our favorites. And because you said it, Matt, I will say it now. We're talking about Tampa. I got 2 more left, and so do you because I can count. But Gronk, I've been in situations where I've waited too long on tight end because there's really like 2 guys that I want. I want Waller first, right? And I don't think it's a bold prediction. You know, see, we can say this when we get older, Matt. You know what I hate about this industry is when everyone's like, I'm going to tweet something that nobody else has thought of. What, Darren Waller's the tight end 1? Are you kidding me? That's your hot take? Hey, guys, Darren Waller's really good. I'm going to take him before Travis Kelce. Oh, my God, that branch is going to break. You're out there on that thin island. What are you doing? Like, you're crazy talk. Like, oh, my God, can we please calm down on everyone swinging for the – one, keeping receipts on Twitter. I had to tweet to my man, Eric DeLala from the Broncos, hunting Wolverines, because he was keeping receipts on some troll with like 10 followers that said Bradley Chubb was, or who the hell knows, who the hell cares? I'm like, why are you keeping receipts on trolls, Eric? When you work for the team, go get to work. 2, so keeping receipts, and then these stupid hot takes that we get. Hey, wait a second, guys. Darren Waller, really good. Yeah, But Matt, now that my mini rant's over, you can tell when the coffee kicks in, right? Thank you, Starbucks. Thank you very much. Anyway, I've ran into situations where I just run out of tight end. And I'm like, okay, give me Tyler Kroft and Rob Gronkowski. But Gronk's one of my favorites because when he scores, everybody knows it. It's one of those things, no matter where you're at, no matter what you're watching, red zone or, I'll be at a Broncos game or something, and it'll come on when Gronkowski scores. It's the spike heard around the world. And, yeah, that spike makes me happy.
It's hard not to love Rob Gronkowski. I mean, he has such a youthful exuberance playing football, and he's such a physical guy in terms of in the game, and he's unbelievably skilled. And I love drafting Gronkowski myself, and he's one of the guys that he's not on my list, but he's not far off of it. If we were going to expand it to a top 7 to 10, he'd probably be on it because I've been drafting him a lot this year because he's a fun one to wait for. Him and Jared Cook are part of the guys who are also in that, have fallen off the flat earth, of fantasy analysis, where they've fallen off the age cliff. And it seems to me people forget that tight ends capable of elite play or tight ends with elite athletic ability, they may no longer have elite speed, but they still have elite quickness. They've also made up with that with the ability to run great routes. They understand the rapport they need to have with their quarterback. They're good at catching the ball still. Jared Cook's had 2 of the past 3 years. He's been top 12. Rob Gronkowski was really good. And so when you look at this situation, I mean, Rob Gronkowski to me should be a low-end tight end 1, and you can get him so late because O.J. Howard struggled throughout training camp. I mean, he's getting pushed around even as a blocker, and he was one of the best blockers in the league. Part of that's getting used to the leg. He's dropping a lot of passes. He's probably not going to get his 5th-year option. And I think that, he's safe for this year in terms of being on a roster, but he hasn't played well. He's just had flashes of that athletic ability. So the athletic ability is back, but the confidence, the consistency has not been there. It may come back enough for him to contribute, but if it doesn't, they still have Cameron Brate, who's a nice H-back who can fill in when needed and be quite solid. I mean, Jameis Winston rely on him more in the red zone than O.J. Howard early on. So I like that. My number 2 guy, no surprise, another Buccaneer. And I'm not a big fan of Mike Evans as a receiver. Some of my favorite receivers are guys who can give you an all-around game like Robert Woods and Chris Godwin, who can run every route, who can go up and win the ball when need to. They can make you miss. And I like the technician. CeeDee Lamb's another one who I love like that. But I'm loving drafting Mike Evans right now because he's another player. Everyone's like, he didn't play well last year. So, they suddenly last year's performance equates to, dropping him down boards, at least to the point that he's no longer considered an elite wide receiver. He's having the best camp in the past 3 years that his wide receiver coach has been with him. He's in great shape, hasn't taken any time off. He's someone that's making great plays. And last year he was hurt. And people forget that. They forget that he played hurt through most of the year. And when he finally got healthy, guess what? Still a top producer in fantasy down the stretch. So again, you want to me, it's hilarious this year because I feel like I'm looking around and going, did everyone suddenly just start telling everyone that the sky was purple and that the Buccaneers players
forget about Dre?
Yeah.
You forgot about Dre, man. Don't forget about Dre.
Yeah.
I'm like a 20-year-old reference, but that's okay.
Yeah. Just give me Tampa Bay Buccaneers skill players, and I'm all in on them, and certainly he's my number 2.
3 minutes left in the show because I'm on the air in 15 minutes. But the guy, my number 1, could play in Tampa. He'd be great in Tampa. It's Tyler Lockett. And for me, that's a value. It's nothing against DK Metcalf, but they're giving Russell Wilson this season. There's a last dance in Green Bay, but there's one in Seattle too. Now, Seattle was a little more clandestine with their stuff than Green Bay. What do you mean we don't like him? Seattle is giving Russell what he needs to succeed, and that means it's going to be a Russell Wilson-centric, led, focused game. We're going to lean on Chris Carson. Oh, yeah, sure. Alex Collins to line 1. But it's the value that you get from Lockett, who I still think we haven't seen the best from Lockett. As great as he's been, Matt, I still believe there's more there.
Yeah, no, that's a great pick, and he's been consistent as a wide receiver 1, so I love that. I love that pick, and obviously I'm a Russ fan. I love the Seahawks, and I love seeing that they're going to get an opportunity to showcase what Wilson can do at a high level. For me, it's Tom Brady. Big surprise, because I've been pounding that drum all year, and really all last year, that year 2 would be the year that he would get to do what Peyton Manning did in Denver and threaten records. And if he threw 40 touchdowns without knowing the full playbook due to COVID, not having the rapport with his receivers, and like Peyton, the best thing about these quarterbacks, Brady and Manning, were the adjustments they make pre-snap and the ability to work option routes with their receivers, which takes rapport that you don't get when you're practicing in a park and getting kicked out of a park in order to try and get what you can do last year. This year, they've had everyone's healthy, full year to work through all of this. And yes, Byron Leftwich is saying, we're not going to do a lot of shifts, but in practice, they're doing a ton of shifts. Right. Byron Leftwich is basically telling you that he's got a quick release and that he's, and that he was fleet-footed back in the day when he was a quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is about as true as the sky being purple. Tom Brady is going to threaten 50 touchdowns this year. I think he's going to get 5,000,
especially 17 games. Yeah, he'll threaten 55 from Peyton, man.
And if Evans gets hurt, Gronkowski gets hurt, if or Godwin, if 2 of those 3 guys gets hurt, they still have 3 to 4 receivers and tight end combination and running back combinations who can catch the ball. I think it's very tough for him not to get 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns this year. And he's getting drafted, 7th or 8th of the quarterbacks right now. Again, I'm just like, somebody wake up. Either I'm completely crazy, and that's very possible, or it's just the reality. the reality of this world is just like completely gone off kilter, because I'm looking around going, how do you not love Tom Brady this year as a fantasy option? Again, I guess it's the confluence of dragons and injuries and, all sorts of other crazy things that have happened in this world the past few years.
Doing his best, George R. our Martin impression. He is Matt Waldman. I am Cecil Lammey doing my best Jim Rome impression. I remember one of our first comments on iTunes, like back in 2006, was like, "This is like a wannabe Jim Rome." Clones. I haven't listened to Rome in a long time.
We'll have to ask that guy Chrissy who commented about it. Whether that was the case or not. So.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all good. It's all real. Much love out there for everyone. Just know Sigmund is, going through some stuff. Send your thoughts, your prayers, your positive vibes, and he'll be back on the show next week, most likely. So we'll get everything taken care of there. I know he's heard you from all you guys, and he's heard your kind words. So keep them coming. This is the time when so much is going on everywhere with so many people. Just be good to people. Be good to everyone. Pick up the phone. Make that call. Love the people that you love. Hell, love the people you don't love, right? Just be a good person and really try to help us all through all of this, everything that we're all going through. But certainly our thoughts are with everyone on the east with the flooding and down in the Gulf with the hurricane. And it's just, it's time to pull together, man. It always is. That's the secret, Matt.
As Marshawn says, be about that action, boss. I'd rather
Exactly.
see action than words. So be about the action.
There you go. Follow it up by saying, "Hey, thanks for watching." Some outros are better than others. Forgive me. Stay tuned. As always, stay frosty.